Well, hello and welcome, everyone. We'll get started with a few logistics, just so everyone knows all the different tools we have open on the Zoom call for the meeting today. So first of all, we do have translation available. Hopefully, when you logged in, you were able to see the closed captioning option to toggle that on. And Roberto, do you want to welcome folks in Spanish for us?
Sure. Bienvenidos todos. Tenemos la opción de ver esta traducción simultánea en español. Solo tienen que activar la opción de traducción simultánea o closed caption, los que lo necesiten.
And maybe, is there anyone that will be using the translation, just out of curiosity? Do you mind translating that also, Roberto? And then you can chat your response to Abby, if so. También te lo puedo traducir yo misma, pero si quieres usar, si hay alguien que va a usar la traducción, si puedes notificar a Abigail Granberry en el chat para que podamos saber si hay gente usándola. Yeah, no, everyone's on mute, so.
Yeah. So, bueno, ya quedó la traducción. Listo.
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 Gracias, Roberto. Okay.
Sí.
Yeah, and for everyone else, yeah, we'll be able to send those directly to Abigail, and we'll have that return to that at the end of the presentation. Great. Okay, so I will jump right in. Welcome to our virtual community meeting for San Lorenzo Creekway. We have the goal of building equitable active transportation in Alameda County with these great partners, the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District, and Alameda County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. So between the two of them and WRT and HTA, we'll speak a little bit more about in a moment. We've been pulling together the community vision and for the San Lorenzo Creekway, which would be a multi-use path to connect the foothills all the way to the Bay Trail. So I'll talk a little bit about the project and some of the overview. We'll do a bit of introduction. The first part of the presentation will explain the context of the planning work in relation to the master plan and some of the grants that we're looking to get funding for the project. We have a great group of panelists of local experts and national experts, local community members, and that are going to help us understand some of the values that come along with and community benefits that come along with these types of projects, and ultimately share some of our early inspiration and ideas for the planning and design framework. And then again, as I mentioned, we'll have Q&A at the end. Okay, so I'll introduce John Gibbs, who will kick us off here. But Abby has to unmute him.
Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome to this virtual meeting. What an exciting time that we are in indeed. And life still goes on. We're still continuing to think to the future, to think about the benefits to our communities. And there's really a couple very key key goals associated with this project and about this vision. It's about all of us that live in these neighborhoods and want to have access to open space, want to have access to jobs, and want to have access to schools. There's almost 50,000 children in 4 different districts that live along the San Lorenzo Creek corridor and what could become the Creekway and the Creek Trail. So it's about getting kids to school safely. We know they have a lot to navigate in their lives, and including traffic. And this is an opportunity to provide some really great direct access to a number of schools that are all identified on this map. It's also about getting people to jobs and getting folks in and out within their communities and to the various centers, whether it's retail or whether it's downtown Hayward and jobs, or some of the more industrial and manufacturing uses as well. Really important connections for jobs. And this is about just getting out and getting it out and about in our communities for the social and the health benefits. This trail has the opportunity to connect from up in the hills all the way out into the bay. So we're accessing huge regional shorelines and directly from Ashland or Cherryland or Fairview from these neighborhoods in San Lorenzo, we're able to have a much larger impact. So some really important things that we recognize associated with this project. And some of those are further highlighted on this slide, just the things that I just covered. So I'll be back a little bit later in the presentation, and other folks are going to take it away. Welcome.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so I mentioned a bit about the partnership here between HARD and Alameda County. We have Michael Williams and Megan Tiernan on the call with us, and I believe Hank will be joining us. Hank Ackerman will also be joining us. We have WRT design team with us, and HTA, who's leading the grant funding, strategy and development, and working with us to really make sure we can implement a lot of this great vision. And of course, from the community, we've had our stakeholder committee that continues to grow. A couple folks from the group will be speaking today, and others will continue to be involved through some of future committee meetings. So yeah, this list does continue to grow, so please reach out if you have an organization that you think could contribute and be involved. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll have more contact information at the end for that as well. So just to give you a context of where we are, we have currently, we're here today at the first of the series of community workshops. And our goal is really to pull together the community vision and master plan in order to submit to an ATP grant in mid-September. So ATP is the Active Transportation Program. It's a grant program that is funded by the state of California to really encourage active transportation. So a lot of the focus of our work and engagement is really understanding what needs exist currently and how this project can really be shaped to address the needs to serve the community. And you can see we'll have another workshop in June. And if you know anyone that wasn't able to make it tonight, we will be doing a bit of a recap and have a bit more time for questions and answers at this coffee chat that we're doing on this Saturday at 10. Importantly, a big part of how we ensure and share with the grant agencies that we have reached a lot of folks is through gathering your feedback through the online survey. That will remain open until July 15th, and it's really critical that we hear from people of all ages, so make sure that everyone in the household participates. It's pretty easy for kids and seniors to navigate through the tool, so hopefully everyone can be engaged in that, and we really appreciate your feedback. And I will now introduce Peter Winch, who has been also working with HARD on a Trails and Open Space Master Plan and has worked on the Parks Master Plan in the past. So Peter is going to give us a bit of community history that a lot of you already know potentially, but that we think is really interesting and will be folded into our work.
Great, thanks, Christina. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this process. I'm really excited about what could come out of this. And I think it's good to ground what we do in the future with what's come before, so that we understand how this community has developed and where we fit in. Thinking back, of course, the Ohlone people lived in this whole region, and they migrated from place to place where there was fresh water. I think that's interesting to think about because of San Lorenzo Creek, kind of see how the creek sort of threads through the history. The settlement period really was very, very, very rapid in the 1850s and 1860s in this area. We had American settlers coming down, setting up a little town of Hayward, and planting fruit. And we had Meek and Llewellyn in particular planting large acreages of cherries and apricots right around the creek on both sides. The Meek estate, of course, is testament to that. Hayward was really coming into its own as a town. It was sort of a crossroads and a meeting point, and a pleasure, a place to go to enjoy yourself along the creeks. And it was well known for its hotel. As the fruit business matured, it became not just fruit growing, but fruit production and canning. There were big canneries here, and that fruit, both as a raw product and as a canned product, was being shipped first by boat across the bay to San Francisco from landings that were right here at the mouth of the creek, and then very quickly by rail all across the country. The town and sort of the urban development remained closer to the hills in general for a while. And in 1950, actually, Alameda Creek flooded large agricultural areas along the bay. That was all agriculture at that point. And at that time, after that flood, San Lorenzo Creek was channelized. So that resulted in the channelized creek that we know today, and also kind of made way for large-scale suburban development. It was timed also for the automobile era and suburbanization all over the country. And that was very, very rapid here in the 1950s. And just beginning to think about what's sort of shaping things today in Hayward in recent years in these communities. And a lot of it has to do with a new embrace of downtown areas and walkability and getting around by other modes. And so our trail planning work for bikes and pedestrians is really consistent with that. So I think it's helpful to see it in that context. Just a view here of the Meek estate, which just stretched on, and you can see that sort of classic orchard grid. And also to keep in mind how fruit was being carried across the bay from these landings at the bay shore. And an image of the 1950 flood, and then of course the classic sort of suburban tract development of the 1950s. At the top here, you can see an aerial photograph of San Lorenzo Creek before it was channelized, and with the initial subdivisions of Cherryland around it. And you can see all of the meanders of the natural creek as it flowed down from the hills. And then the lower image, of course, is a contemporary image of what we see today. And that condition, I think that in particular, is we're going to be paying a lot of attention to as we do conceptual design work for this creek. There is a access road along one side and or the other side of the creek for most of its length, and that's really what we're using more than anything else to create bike and pedestrian access. And just to reiterate, part of the purpose of understanding this history is thinking about how can it inform the design of what we put into this creek corridor.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you,
And we'll
Peter.
talk about that a little bit more, I think, as the presentation goes on.
Yeah.
The community today, and this is the community in a larger sense, the Hayward Area Recreation District Service Area, which is Hayward and Castro Valley and Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo, and Fairview. Very, very diverse, even more so than the Bay Area as a whole. No majority racial or ethnic group. Large Hispanic population and family-aged population, but spread across all age groups with a growing proportion of seniors. So that's helpful to think about just in terms of who are we serving, what are the needs of this particular community.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Peter. Like I mentioned, WRT is working with HARD on the Trails and Open Space Master Plan, which the San Lorenzo Creekway is a key part of. And of course, there are several other entities in this area that we're dovetailing our work with, including the Alameda County Bike and Ped Master Plan. San Leandro recently completed their master plan and ongoing work in Hayward and others. So we're fitting into a lot of work and making sure that we're really trying to coordinate our efforts to make an effective system here. And along with that, from the bike and pedestrian side, there's also a lot of housing development and other sort of private developments that will be actually building some segments of the trail and the Creekway. So we have identified Trailland Place, Lincoln Landing. There's a proposal near Ruby Meadows and at B Street here. So things that we're keeping in mind as we put together the overall vision and the master plan for the Creekway. So that sort of wraps up our introduction, and now we're going to sort of open it up to our panel. So I want to welcome and thank Diana Maravilla, who's the Health and Wellness Coordinator from San Lorenzo Unified School District. We have Sarah Bowser from the City of Hayward, who's the Planning Manager there. Susie Hofstadter, Advocacy Manager for Bike East Bay, and Ben Kaufman from Rails to Trails. So thank you for being here. Just we'll give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves and their organizations and share a bit about their perspective on these types of Creekway trail improvement projects, and then have a quick discussion and then we'll save sort of questions and answers to the very end of the presentation. But I will turn it over to Diana.
Thank you so much, Christina, and good evening, everyone. My name is Diana Maravilla, and as mentioned already, I'm the Health and Wellness Coordinator for San Lorenzo Unified School District. I'm really happy to be a part of tonight's meeting and to share insight on how San Lorenzo Unified is working towards creating more opportunities for our students, families, and staff to live, learn, and work in a more healthy and well community, and how the San Lorenzo Creekway will help promote access to open and equitable spaces for our students. Next slide. So just to give you an overview of the students that we currently serve, I wanted to provide a bit of information about our students within our district. As you can see, we currently serve a little over 10,000 students. If you look to the right, you see that you're going to see the pie chart. Out of those 10,000 students, about 65% of them qualify for free and reduced lunch. And on the far right, you see a different pie chart that shows the ethnicity breakdowns that we serve within our district. And just to kind of reiterate what Peter Winch mentioned earlier, that it's important to look at these demographics to see the populations that we're serving in our community. Next slide. Okay, so now that we have a bit of a background information about the students we are serving within our district, I want to pivot and share a bit more about, information about my role as the health and wellness coordinator within our district, and also as the public health advocate. My role within the district greatly emphasizes on the importance of supporting the health and wellness needs of our student population. We all know that healthy students are better learners, and students who have poor nutrition due to built environment and other factors, or who lack physical activity and overall unhealthy lifestyles, can lead to poor academic achievements. For that reason, our district has been working towards building up the student wellness plan, which is monitored by an advisory council on a monthly basis. And here you are seeing the focus areas, which include child nutrition, social, emotional, mental health, restorative practices, physical education and activity, gardening and green sustainable practices, and health education. The asterisks on this slide represent a crossover areas of how the student wellness plan overlaps with the San Lorenzo Creekway plan. Having access to open and green and safe places will help promote well-being and engagement in the community. It encourages exercise, which we know helps release the endorphin chemical in our body, also known as the happy hormone. It provides a space for socializing, which enhances our social capital and connectivity in our community. It decreases noise and air pollution because people are moving through active forms of, just active forms. And it improves our overall immune functions. As you can see, all of these are positive outcomes that will, many of our students, families, and staff will benefit from the San Lorenzo Creekway. It will help promote positive behaviors through active transportation and help shape attitudes about outdoor recreational activities. Next slide. One of the early lessons from my personal lived experience of growing up in East Oakland and from pursuing an education in public health is the importance of social determinants of health. As you can see in this graph, the social determinants of health are interrelated social, economic, and environmental factors and conditions that people's abilities to access resources and opportunities. These influence and shape our lives. Some of these determinants include access to education, housing, built environments, access to healthcare services, food security, and so on. In the role of neighborhood and built environment, if we have limited public spaces and parks or recreational and community centers are not available, the attitudes and behaviors of the people within the community will be reflected. And just one thing that we learn in public health is in order to cure a disease, like chronic diseases, which I will talk about in the next couple of slides, we have to treat more than just the symptoms, and we have to get to the root of the problem. And so the social determinants of a health problem will help us get to that root. And I'll just share, I know we're on this slide, but I'll just share that in a study done by the EPA, it stated that by 2050, about 60% of our world population is projected to live in cities, and that the average American spends about 93% of their time indoors. All of this to add just the importance of providing access to green and safe open spaces, just like the San Lorenzo Creekway. And just to share some facts about our county here, I'm just going to read, I'll just wrap up and emphasize once again the importance of having access to these spaces. As you can see, in Alameda County, more than half of the adults and a third of our school-age children in grades 5th, 7th, and 9th are overweight and obese. And heart disease and diabetes, both which are tied to obesity, were among the top 10 leading causes of deaths. This is back in 2010. And diabetes and metabolic nutritional disorders were among the top 10 most common reasons for hospitalization in children in Alameda County between 2007 and 2010. I will share this report in the chat room. I'll just wrap up by sharing this fun fact that in Japan, there is a term called Shinrin Yoku, which translates for forest bathing. I don't know if many of you have heard of this idea. And the idea of forest bathing is that It encourages people to disconnect from technology and to simply be in nature and connecting with it through the senses of sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. And forest bathing provides many positive benefits and well-being to individuals. And this is something that we hope to get from the San Lorenzo Creekway. Next slide. Just to wrap up, my name is Diana Maravilla, and I'm the Health and Wellness Coordinator. I hope you found this information out, and here's my contact information if you would like to get connected to the efforts that we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Diana. Yeah, there's silent applause happening in the... Thank you very much. I will shift gears and introduce Sarah Bowser from the City of Hayward.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this virtual community meeting. I think this is a really exciting project, something that the City of Hayward is really excited about. I am the planning manager for the City of Hayward, and so I oversee a staff that is processing new applications for new development and redevelopment of sites, as well as we look at long-term policy documents and look at ways to better the City of Hayward and make better opportunities for those folks that live within the community. Next slide. Some of the ways in which I think this project really helps touch on and further the goals and the objectives that we have for the City of Hayward are sort of in three different areas. So there's new development that we have coming on that was mentioned in the beginning, projects like Lincoln Landing, that through that development process, we were able to coordinate with that developer in order to obtain at least a portion of this actual creekway to start getting developed as a part of the development of that site. And that site is now under construction, and we're really excited to see that continue to move forward. But that particular project provides an opportunity for folks to connect from existing neighborhoods in Hayward along that creekway towards our downtown without, having to walk along Foothill, which is feels a lot more like a freeway than a roadway through Hayward. So this just provides a nice alternative for people to connect from the neighborhoods in through to our downtown. The other way that this is really important is we've got a number of long-term policy documents, particularly our Hayward 2040 general plan that was adopted in 2014, so quite some time ago. However, the idea is that we had, this was a complete overhaul of the City of Hayward's general plan, which is sort of the long-term sort of blueprint for how we would like to see the City of Hayward develop over the next 20 years. And some of the elements that we included in that general plan included a community wellness and health and wellness element, as well as our natural resources element, which really looked at policies related to daylighting creeks or providing more access to creeks, as well as our mobility element, which really talks about trying to get people out of their cars and onto trails and bikes and things like that. And then we also have our plans for our connectivity, which includes things like our downtown specific plan, which got it sort of the initial conversations about how do we connect people, get them out of their cars, get them walking on trails and connecting neighborhoods to services, and how do we do that effectively. And so we started those conversations with the adoption of our downtown specific plan, but a lot of that is going to continue in the work that we're doing with our bicycle and pedestrian master plan, which will go a little more citywide. But I think that it really, this particular project is really exciting, at least to me and the city, because it's great to see some of these things that we envisioned so long ago actually starting to come to fruition, and to start to see how we can connect people, get people out of their cars, connect them to their services, connect students to schools, and people to their jobs and to services. And so we're just really excited to be part of this process, and looking forward to its continued success.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Susie Hofstadter. I'm Advocacy Manager with Bikies Bay. First, I want to say that I miss you all. I see a lot of familiar names and faces on the call, and normally around this time of year, we'd be doing a lot of work together to prepare for Bike to Work Day and other big community events in the spring, and it really is a shame that it's all canceled, and it's nice to see you all virtually. So my name is Susie. I have been working with Bike East Bay, which is an advocacy organization here in the East Bay. I've been here about 4 years. Bike East Bay works regionally in both Contra Costa and Alameda counties. Our mission is to promote healthy, sustainable communities by making bicycling safe, fun, and accessible. And we do that through advocacy, education, and fun events. And as some of you may know from the various events that we've done in the unincorporated areas and Hayward over the years, we also do a lot of things in partnership with other issues, including health, wellness, pedestrian safety. So the sort of centerpiece of our organization is the bicycle, but we are working on a lot of other things too. Next slide, please. So I want to start with the education and fun events because that's, I think, how most of you are familiar with what we do. So these are just a variety of photos. I realize that this is actually all Ashland, but there's similar photos from Hayward, Cherryland, Castro Valley, San Lorenzo, and San Leandro. We've had our education programs pretty much while covering all of those areas. So we just work in partnership with a lot of neighborhood groups to bring bike education for kids and adults to the neighborhood. The picture you see on the top left is from Ashland Place. We did a bike giveaway and education program there. The two on the right are both from the Eden Walk and Roll Fest that we organize in partnership with a whole bunch of community groups, many of whom are on this call also to provide bike giveaways and education. Bottom left is the, what's it called? FamFest. Last summer, we did a big bike rodeo there. And we also organized Bike to Work Day, Pedal Fest, and a few other major events throughout the year. So the goal of all of this is just to sort of get people excited about biking, provide resources for folks who might not have bikes at home or who might not know how to ride a bike yet. We've done Learn to Ride bilingual Spanish-English at Eden Church for adults and teenagers. We do all kinds of 1-hour workshops about bike theft prevention and things like that. So just trying to bring all of the resources that anyone might need to get going on a bike. So where this all comes in with the Creek Trail, the Creekway project, is that even though we work super hard to bring all of these resources and the education and encouragement events are a major part of our work, the advocacy piece, which is mostly what my position is really important too, because as folks are learning how to bike or getting a new bike or learning all of these skills, if there isn't a really safe and protected place to ride, it's still going to be really difficult. And as folks know, a lot of the streets in our areas have a lot of high-speed traffic, so the safety issues are real and a really big concern. Next slide, please. So at Bike East Bay, the advocacy that we do is really focused on building a network regionally of low-stress facilities that will allow people of all ages and abilities to travel and get exercise in their communities. And when we say all ages and abilities or low stress facilities, the sort of litmus test is, would you let your middle schooler ride there, or would you ride there with maybe somebody who's you know, aging a little bit, elders in your community, or maybe on like a adaptive cycle, or somebody walking using a mobility device? Is it somewhere that our more vulnerable neighbors would feel comfortable and safe traveling? So the three types of facilities that we really focus on are multi-use path, that's what we're talking about today, protected bike lane, the one in the photo is in Alameda, there's actually one in South Hayward now on Mission Boulevard, and a bike boulevard, which is a designated route with extremely low traffic. So we're focusing now on the Creek Trail, Creekway, which is similar to the Ohlone Greenway in the top photo, but it also matters how they intersect with the rest of the network. Next slide, please. So some of you who live in the unincorporated areas may recognize this map from the outreach process for the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. There's also a map for San Leandro and for Hayward up to the north and south, but this is sort of the majority of where the Creekway goes through. You can see the line. Yes, thank you for tracing it. So what I kind of want to highlight here is that the purple line of Mission Boulevard and Cherryland, which will be getting a protected bike lane, hopefully in the next few years, pending funding, as well as a variety of regular bike lanes that intersect. And the hopefully future East Bay Greenway, also pending lots of planning process. But you can see that it starts to shape up into a network where people can travel regionally on facilities that are really safe and comfortable and fun and feel great. And also the Bay Trail is the one existing trail there. I was actually just down in this neighborhood riding my bike this weekend, and there were just so many people. Wow, this is the only really like bike trail in the neighborhood, and it's kind of far down there. It's just super well used, so that was really exciting to see, and I think that there's a lot of demand. So next slide, please. So this is just one example of the type of thing that my organization will advocate for. This is the sort of rendering for what might come on Mission Boulevard soon, and that's already in the works from Alameda County Public Works, and that will intersect this trail, so that's really exciting. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share a few examples of some trails locally, and I know Ben is going to talk more about this, so I won't spend too much time, but the picture on the left is a big group ride that my organization did in partnership with a smaller group called Bike Walk San Leandro, and we rode all the way from San Leandro, BART, down to Bay Fair via the whole San Lorenzo loop. And this is the area that I was just referring to that was so full of people this weekend, and this would also intersect with the Greenway, with the Creekway. And the photo you see on the right is the Richmond Greenway, and I think this is an important one because it's a good example of the type of programming and sort of placemaking that can happen in a trail space like this. If folks are familiar, the Greenway in Richmond has just a huge amount of community programs happening. There's art and murals. So I'm so glad that Joaquin from Reach is here, who runs the art program at Reach, because I know that that program will be a great partner. There's Rich City Rides, which is a local bike group, and they lead a ride every single Sunday, what they call Self-Care Sunday. They have a community garden space and nature programs. There's just a lot of opportunities for programming that will bring all of those elements that Diana was talking about that provide health and wellness for the community, as well as transportation. So next slide, please. I think that might have been it for me. Yeah, so thank you for having me, and I can't wait to see you all once we're done with all this, riding bikes together again.
Thank you, Susie. That's great. I have to insert applause, some sort of, thank you again. And Ben Kaufman, welcome to the panel, and thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. And hi, everyone. I'm Ben Kaufman. I am the Trail Development Manager in the Western region for the Rails to Trails Conservancy. Next slide, please. For those who are not familiar with the Rails to Trails Conservancy, next slide, we are a national nonprofit, and we work to create networks of trails from former rail lines, but also connecting corridors to help build healthier places for healthier people. And we do this with partners in local communities like yours. Next slide. And so we have three prongs. Basically, we help on trail projects themselves, such as the San Lorenzo Creekway. So we do trail planning, trail building, trail assistance. We do policy work, so we kind of work with the federal and state governments to get funding for trails and defend trails against legal fights. And then we do trail promotion. So we have a blog, we have a magazine, and we try and get people out on trails as much as possible. Next slide. So we were founded in 1986, and when we were founded, there were 250 miles of trails, multi-use trails in the entire US, and as of September of 2019, there were over 24,000 miles of open multi-use trails with over 8,000 in progress. So that's pretty exciting, and we're hoping to put San Lorenzo Creekway in that pipeline as well. Next slide. This is just a map of all the multi-use trails that exist around the country, and you can go to traillink.com to check those out and find a trail near you. Next slide. So I just want to talk to you a tiny bit about the benefit of trails. And Roberto, I'm so sorry for speaking too fast if you're trying to catch up with closed captioning. Next slide. So a big part of the benefit of trails are the economic benefits. So Americans actually spend more on bicycling each year than on airline travel, fun fact. And they also, trails encourage direct consumer spending at small local businesses. There's a trail called the Great Allegheny Passage that travels through Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, and is responsible for, on average, around $40 million a year of direct consumer spending. They also are create more jobs than any other type of transportation project in the country. So 17 jobs per $1 million spent, which is also a fun fact. And in a study that they were identified by 60% of home buyers as the most desirable community feature influencing their home purchase. Next slide, please. They also increase property values. There was a study out of Pennsylvania where homes went for $30,000 higher than the rest of the town. In Indianapolis, they were seen as being responsible for over $140 million in increased property values, looking at the homes around a particular trail. And then they also increased property demand. So trail adjacent lots sold faster in Brown County, Wisconsin, than other homes, and 9% more on average. And in a study in Denver, there were 73% of real estate agents surveyed believe that homes adjacent to trails are easier to sell. Next slide. There are also safety and security benefits of trails. So trails, there's no direct link in the research of trails being more safe or less safe than non-trails. So overall, it's deemed as a wash. But there are concerns about trails being a place where bad activity happens, and that can be mitigated by a concept called crime prevention through environmental design, or CEPTED as it's known. So this involves trail patrols, which is kind of a citizen-led phenomenon of folks kind of looking after the trail, lighting to make sure that people are feeling safe on the trail, and promotion and programming. Susie mentioned the Richmond Greenway, and I think that's a really great example of promotion and programming. As Susie mentioned, this is, there are rides on the trail every week. There's folks gardening. There's different organizations that have kind of taken stewardship of different segments of that trail. And there's always different activities. Now there's playgrounds popping up around the trail, and people are out there and really seeing it as a community space. And I think that's kind of the point that I would like to drive home, is just the community aspect of trails. Next slide, please. Yet there are also equity benefits. So especially in the Bay Area, so there's a PolicyLink study in which it found that more than 2/3 of African Americans and Latinos in the Bay Area are overweight or obese. Low-income communities are typically in park-poor neighborhoods in the Bay Area. So as compared to their wealthier, whiter neighborhoods in the Bay Area, where there are a lot more parks in closer proximity to those neighborhoods, and communities of color are typically have less access to cars. So it's a transportation option, especially for the car-free and car-light households in the Bay Area. Next slide, please. And there's transportation benefits, as I'm sure you all know. This is an interesting fact. Nearly 3/4 of Americans feel they have no choice but to drive as much as they do, and 2/3 would like more transportation options. And there's pollution mitigation, congestion mitigation, and a general reduction of reliance on automobiles. Next slide. Health benefits, fewer than 33% of Americans meet the federal exercise recommendation. So trails can help encourage people to get outside and to incorporate exercise into their daily routines. Next slide. And environmental benefits, obviously, they can preserve natural landscapes, help to reduce invasive species, reconnect fragmented habitats, and then improve air quality and reduce vehicle emissions, which helps the environment as well. And I think that is it. And yeah, that's something, I just encourage everyone to keep those in mind when thinking about the San Lorenzo Creekway and how the trail can benefit your community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. So we have a lot of expertise, and I think having all of you here and having the community available to understand sort of your point of view from each of your sort of areas of expertise is really beneficial. It was great for me to hear already as folks were presenting where some of these threads and partnerships can start to form to really support and sort of co-support all of our efforts and have the Creekway, I think, really be a vehicle for that. If I could, I think just I'll ask one question and feel free to chime in however order you see fit, but I'd ask you to share your sort of if you wanted to have one big concise sort of takeaway or goal or hope for the Creekway project. That's a big question, but if you have a thought, I would love to hear that from each of you before we start looking at some of the inspirational images and ideas we've been cooking together. Does anyone want to jump in first? Okay, maybe everyone's on mute, but
you underneath
Oh boy, everybody just got unmuted the whole
well, now we're in everyone's living.
I can jump in. I can take a bite at that.
Thanks, Susie.
I think my experience with trails in community is that it's just a sight of pure joy. I love seeing whenever I am on a trail anywhere, like Bay Trail, Richmond Greenway, Ohlone Greenway, Iron Horse Trail, doesn't matter what community it is, you always just see families out there, kids able to just be free without worrying about cars, stretch their legs, get somewhere, maybe not get somewhere, maybe just spin around and be together. And I think by the time this is built, we'll be together again, and I look forward to that.
I would just add that for me, I think that as a kid, I walked everywhere, I biked everywhere. It was just what you did. You were rarely in a car getting from point A to point B. It was just how you got around your community. And I just think that, a trail like this can not only help, provide that opportunity for the folks that live in and around it, but it helps connect those communities, and so that they're not so siloed. So you've got, the San Lorenzo Creekway runs through parts of San Leandro and unincorporated Alameda County and the city of Hayward, and the fact that, it doesn't know boundaries. There aren't boundaries. You don't have those jurisdictional boundaries with something like this project, and it sort of brings everybody together. And I just think it's a real benefit, and I think would be exciting to see this come to fruition, so that, you know, my kids will be able to, you know, walk and bike where they want to go without having fear of getting hit by a car or something like that. And I just think it provides those sort of opportunities. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Joaquin. I'm at the Reach Ashland Youth Center, and I work with a lot with the young people. And I'm really excited about this project. And thanks for everybody for kind of connecting us to this, and potentially having Reach be like a hub for youth engagement and involvement in this. And so that's what we're working on as part of this. And we're working on a plan to engage youth, to at least engage the survey and get more awareness about this project. And yes, I mean, trails, open space, and truly public space is really shrinking in the world. You know, green spaces are amazing, and there's a lot of wonderful agencies and nonprofits working for open spaces and public spaces. But, you know, really urban truly public space is really difficult. I mean, the streets, I mean, they're constantly maintained and monitored by, you know, people, and surveilled in certain ways. And so, like, for young people to have spaces to express themselves, you know, and I know people aren't always saying, oh, go ahead and make a greenway and let's graffiti it up, but knowing that there's a place there to really have openness to just be free and just feel free in your urban environment is really essential, especially in this time. I'm like, if this place were open right now, and it would probably be overcrowded with people biking up and down in that area, and necessarily, but also as a transportation method, like we have to like build an infrastructure for alternative transportation from where, you know, all around this area that's constantly, you know, it's just littered with highways and, you know, impermeable roadways. So it's really great to have this connected to, you know, an ancient waterway. So this is great project, and great excited to be working with everybody on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Joaquin. Great.
And I would just say that the connections to neighbors and the idea of a trail as a community gathering space is probably the most exciting prospect for me. I would really encourage, you know, especially because the proposed Creekway kind of goes through the community so much and gets so close to residential areas. Folks who have not been to the Richmond Greenway, go out there and kind of see what it has done in terms of connecting the community to each other. It's really kind of the community's backyard, and people go there to gather and meet neighbors and play chess and garden together. And it's a really beautiful site. And I have high hopes for that being the same with the San Lorenzo Creekway in your community.
Great.
I'll just add to what everyone else just shared. I'm looking forward to seeing people from ages 8 to 80 just being engaged in this Creekway. I think we all learn by behavior. So if we see somebody doing something, we're gonna tag along and replicate that behavior. And, you know, just having access to open spaces will help leverage that. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing that, you know, just having more access to open spaces.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll shift gears now and jump back into sharing a bit of some of the early design and inspiration work. And thank you again to all of our panelists and folks for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, John's giving you a round of applause again. Thanks. So yeah, focusing back on to sort of the extent of the project, something I wanted to highlight is that the master plan vision is really about connecting all of these schools and parks and community areas all the way from the Bay Trail up to the regional parks in the Foothill area. The focus of the ETP grant, we're narrowing our focus a bit to connect the Bay Trail all the way to A Street, essentially. So a lot of the detailed work that we're doing and putting cost estimates together for this first phase is focused really on the central community areas. I wanted to make that point. But of course, our visioning effort will be complete here for the full extent. Some projects, local projects that were mentioned already, but Ohlone Greenway, we talked about Richmond Greenway, that's not pictured here. But just showing some ideas for what the character of materials might be from all across the country and the world. We just wanted to show, where we're seeing different components and of how to build a creekway and how they come together. So sharing some of those images here. Digging into understanding, how the creekway fits in with the existing infrastructure. The entire creekway fits in to the flood control district's right-of-way. So all of the paths and sort of entrance ramps are all built within the existing access roads for that flood facility. And we're showing here how that creekway would and those entrances would sort of fit in. So this is taken right near Grove Way and Mission. If you've ever sort of looked down or out over the bridge there, you can have seen what that might look like. And often in this area, there's this concrete channel for the creekway, and that gives us about 10 to 12 feet here for that passage. Further down towards the bay, the cross-section changes pretty significantly. There's more of a natural embankment. There's a bit larger right-of-way. Again, it's all within the flood control district property, but there's an opportunity to sort of add a bit more seating or more opportunities for rest in this area. So I wanted to show how that cross-section changes. We're looking at, this is getting a little bit more detailed, but we're really looking at how the 10 to 12 feet how those components will start to fit between bike and pedestrian facilities. So there's a shared use model where bikes and peds sort of share each direction. And you can see how sort of privacy fencing, railing, and a paved area would all those basic components would come together within those dimensions, and where in the 16-foot right away you might have other opportunities. The other potential way of breaking this out is by looking at separated lanes, which people might be more familiar with in the States, and some of the projects locally. Again, it's a continuous flat paved surface, but you have a separated bike facility from the pedestrian facility. So you can see how those would start to break down. And yeah, I think this might look familiar if you have already taken our online survey, so I'll plug the online survey one more time, and I'm sure I will again. But it's really interesting for us to collect information about where people might imagine entering what sort of entrances and exits people will use to reach a lot of the destinations. And a lot of that is related to how those opportunities along the creekway are laid out. So I'll sort of flip through some of that. A typical entrance and road crossing here, just showing an example at Meekland Avenue. So in the existing photo here, you can see if you're standing down on the access road, there isn't clearance under the bridge. So that photo is taken right here, looking towards the bridge. So in this case, you would use those access ramps. The creekway would come up to the main street level and use a safe street crossing to cross Meekland and get back onto the south bank of the creekway. So this is good to see how these facilities and the sort of the importance of really coordinating the implementation of the an updated safe crossing, connecting to public transit, what sort of eddies and activity spots are available to keep those entrances active, and how it fits to other bike facilities. So the Meekland Avenue bike lane that starts just off this page here would connect directly to the Creekway here. I'll flip now through a couple ideas and inspiration images for some of those components, a few ideas for paving, interesting graphics that might be implemented into like an asphalt design, where special treatments might exist in areas where you might encourage bicyclists to slow down, or points of interest, different benches and seating arrangements that could fit into any of those opportunity areas. Lighting, we've talked about the importance of having lighting at some of those entrances just to provide a safety feature. Not necessarily that you need to light up the entire trail, but the idea that you have these really critical key places where you make that investment. The signage and wayfinding potential to really highlight some of the history that we've discussed, some of the ecology, and sort of provide sort of that interpretive layer to the plan, and of course to highlight key destinations that people can reach and orient them. A couple ideas about railing and some of the fencing and screening materials. Shade structures, including some local examples here from Edendale and Guadalupe River. The bridge typology and an example from Castro Valley. So all of those components and features could exist along or these areas that we're calling eddies, you know, the activity spots along the trail. And I'll invite John back onto the mic here. But he has to be unmuted, I think. Putting Abby on the spot.
And we're back. Hey, everybody. So we've just
I also
heard.
think people can unmute themselves. Sorry, I should have told people that.
I haven't
so, yeah.
have that ability. Good to know. Well, and I'm just so excited. We still have even more people at this point of the call than we did at the beginning. So our numbers have continued to climb. I guess we're doing a good job. We're like the best show online right now for everybody. Happy 8 o'clock. Just as a wrap here, we've talked all about the value of this trail. We've talked a lot about design ideas and inspiration, what this could look like. And we have enlisted a very talented artist as part of our team just to show what does all this start to look like when you put it together. And I think what we're starting to see is it is an attractive place. It's distinctive. It has the opportunity to say, yeah, I'm in Ashland, I'm in Cherryland, I'm in San Lorenzo, San Leandro, I'm in Castro Valley, I'm here, and have some of its own identity. So we're just going to click through this. These are visions. This isn't necessarily what it can be, and it's certainly not what we can afford, because at the moment we don't have budget. So we're submitting for this grant, and then that gives us a really good start, and that this is really, I think, what we can all begin to aspire to. And we've talked a lot about the Richmond Greenway so far, and you know, it began as an idea, it began as a trail, and it's really taken the work and the efforts, and then it's the result of a lot of great investments that have been made over time. So as we click through these, I'll just narrate just a few things, and we can certainly move to the next image. So what do you get when you're down at those lower reaches of the creek, and we're out near the Bay Trail, and we begin to see the striping, we begin to see the clarity of the trail, and here we're starting to see places for people to sit, for people to pause, to understand and interpret the wildlife. There is a really rich and interesting ecology that exists in some portions along this trail, certainly here at the Bay and certainly at the upper reaches, and that's something that we want to connect folks to. Moving along, here we're really right in the midsection and within the neighborhoods, and this is a location where we have the creek, and the image, the rendering begins to show what happens along the way, what happens with railings, what happens with potential overlooks, a place to pause, the bridge that would need to be built to cross from one side to the other following the existing public right-of-way or flood control district right-of-way. Also opportunities for signage, opportunities for the interpretive wayfinding, and important screening. There's a lot of adjacent neighbors, and there's going to be safety and security treatments that will be considered all throughout the corridor.
Great. Thank you, John. So thank you everyone for being so patient and being attentive to the presentation. It is 8:10 and we have the meeting open until 8:30. I have the slide with the online survey again, to remind everyone in your household to take the online survey, especially kids and seniors. We have a virtual coffee chat this Saturday at 10 a.m. So we'll sort of recap today's presentation and have a bit more time for the Q&A, because we won't have the panelists on Saturday, but we'll be able to flip through some of their work. So please let your friends and community who weren't able to make it tonight know about that opportunity again. And of course, we have contact information for emails and for the website. So we'll be posting the presentation, and just wanted to let folks know about that. But we do have time for Q&A here, and I'm going to turn it over to Abby if you want to help us sort of facilitate a little bit. Were there any burning questions throughout the presentation that we want to start with? And
yeah, so Bernadette had some comments, and I'm gonna she's still with us. I'm gonna unmute her.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
So good evening, thanks for all the presentations. I appreciated them all, but I have to say, as a homeowner along the creek, I have yet to really, I hear all the excitement that comes from the city of Hayward, from the bikes and trails, from the rails to trails. I'm also somebody who worked in construction for the good part of my career, and I'm a LEED Green associate, so I know about sustainability. I've heard comments about how most of the people that ended up in ICUs with COVID weighed over 250 pounds. I put in community gardens. So I just need you to know that I'm not somebody against something like this, but I'm particularly upset that none of you that presented, I'm sure, own property along here. I've lived here 20 years. I've paid taxes. I've contributed to the community. I've participated in the community. And I think there's something apart from the excitement, and I'm familiar with some of the other trails that you mentioned. I'm not an uninformed person, given I worked in the industry that at least a few of you came from. I think it's really an oversight. I've not heard anybody talk about what's your intention on involving the homeowners whose privacy will be severely impacted by this. Through no fault or no concern or no interest of our own. And also the whole issue about raising property values, is just, I've been in sales my entire life. So, you sort of have to prove to me doubly, because I know how things can be presented in their most positive light, as opposed to, did you really take into impact the true stakeholders, some of the people whose experience of the places that they've invested in for years are right along that trail. So that's my only comment. I'm not a negative person. I'm not a positive person. I'm just sort of making a comment.
Hey, this is John. Good to have your voice and your perspective. And yeah, we hear that. We hear you. And I think there's going to be a lot of work working with stakeholders and folks throughout the community, and certainly as this thing moves along, working with with adjacent owners as well, and talking about safety and security and fencing. So. You may be getting involved here for the first time, but I think this won't be the last time. And thanks for weighing in. And yeah, we hear you on those thoughts. There's a lot more engagement and work to be done.
Thanks, John. Other comments or questions? I see one came in from Bruce. Do you want to say it out loud, Bruce, or should we?
Okay, yeah, Bruce.
Hey there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure what I'm talking through, but I guess you can hear me.
No one knows.
So I guess I was wondering, what can you clarify what the scope of I realize you're working on it right now, but what you might think be the scope of the ATP grant application? Like, is it going to include engineering, construction, the length of the trail? Can you be a little bit clearer on that? And when will the state give us the answer on whether we get the grant? And then also, do you think that we're collecting less gas tax money right now? Will that affect how much the state will have available for this round of ATP funding? That's my question.
Yeah, those are great questions. To just go over the trail segment extent again, the ATP scope goes from the Bay Trail through basically the Hayward Japanese Garden to A Street. And we're going to be focusing our efforts on that sort of central segment first. In terms of what we're applying for design, engineering, and construction, we are including those phases. So that's part of our effort this summer, is to really build out that cost estimate and make sure we're getting all of those components built into that grant. Because I don't know if we mentioned it as part of the community engagement schedule, but the ATP grant deadline was extended from June 15th to September 15th. And I believe that also extends the schedule for sort of review and reporting back. So I don't have that date in front of me, but
I do.
Abby
It is June 20. It's June 2021.
Okay, is when we would be notified.
Find out. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. And yeah, there's been impacts to sort of revenue sources for different agencies. Certainly, I haven't heard the latest on how it might impact this grant round, but perhaps others on our team have thoughts on that.
Yeah, the short and simple answer is we don't know. Nobody knows. So it's a good question, but we don't know, and we will get information on that as the process unfolds.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Okay. Christina, can I ask a clarifying question?
Oh, sure.
Did you say that the scope of this application will start at the Bay?
Yes. Yeah, we're looking to include the connection all the way to the Bay Trail as part of the goal for the design.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I believe that Tyler has a comment.
Hi, hello.
Like.
I am Tyler Dragoni. I live across the street from property owners that directly abut the creek. And I am in 100% support of this project. I think that, you know, it's such a, when the question is, you know, balancing with that, what is that balancing act? The public good of the creek as a recreation facility, as a transportation corridor, as a just, you know, asset to connect with nature just so outweighs the potential, you know, negatives that we could, you know, find a way to mitigate. And I just think that, you know, it's not an insurmountable problem to kind of, you know, answer the questions that property owners might have, and to do really, you know, effective, you know, design that could really put their minds at ease, I guess you could say. I just think that it's not out of the realm of reasonableness to get, you know, everyone in support of this project, because it's just such a, you know, once in a lifetime, you know, thing, and just really in support. So thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for your comment.
All right.
Okay, people are getting warmed up
Yeah.
in the chat.
So Vincent, there are two Vincents, so it's a little confusing. Asks, will there be more virtual meetings like this after COVID? And I don't know if you want to speak to it, Vincent. But.
Oh yeah, well I can say that yes, our engagement plan for this year, it's always has the virtual option. I think we're going to try to see if later on in the summer, depending on how some of our public health advice changes, to see if we can have maybe smaller group meetings in person again. But the goal is really to have the larger forums virtually. So we will be live again.
Excellent. And I skipped one. BPN Jensen says there are many, so there are some footbridges across the creek that may not be open, and they have been sorely missed. So it'd be great to open them again. And then as for signage, I recommend to look at the signs used by San Mateo County Parks. Simple, excellent, and effective.
Great.
So thank you for that. Definitely great notes. And then, and if you'd like to jump in and add anything, just.
Oh, thank you. No, that's okay. I just want to mention those two things. One thing I just, very quickly, there's a bridge in back of the Kip King School that used to be open. It used to be a good pedestrian footbridge. It was really sad to lose it because we used it frequently. And since that has happened, at least one child who attends that school that I know of has been killed because they used the railroad track to get to school from San Leandro instead of being able to take that bridge across. And that was really heartbreaking. So that it would be really nice if that bridge could be opened again.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and definitely part of our focus in that segment is about creating safe crossings where there's the railroad conflicts with the Creekway. So we're going to be looking at that really closely to make sure we can get connections around that safely. And yeah, very tragic loss there. That existing bridge, we are definitely planning to look into it and see. I think it's more related to some of the agreements past agreements potentially between the flood control district and the school. So I think that'll definitely be an ongoing conversation as we start looking at the Creekway plan there. Thanks for the comment.
And Vincent Medina. Thank you so much for your comments. So he's a member of the Ohlone tribe, and his family has been living here along the creek for thousands upon thousands of years, and your viewpoint is so valuable for this work. And he mentioned that it's important to acknowledge in respectful ways that the indigenous people of San Lorenzo Creek are here, present and active, and keeping our culture strong. And we really welcome and want to incorporate you in this process. And thank you for coming so early in this process so that we can really have that voice be strong. So thank you for your viewpoint. And if you'd like to add anything, now's your chance. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Vincent.
Hello. Hi. Thank
Hi.
you for, hello. Hi. Thanks for opening up this platform to share some input. Yeah, I just wanted to share that throughout this process, incorporating our tribe, Moekma, which is specifically the tribe of this area that we're in, so of this specific area of the East Bay. And our family has consistently throughout colonization worked to stay right here, and our ancestors have never left this area, and as a result, our tribe still lives right here along this area, and we want people to know that. We're not a recognized tribe. Our great-grandparents were born into a federally recognized Ohlone tribe in Pleasanton, but that was taken from our family in the 1920s. So as a result, there's a lot of invisibility and things that we're trying to correct about misinformation out there. And I'm a member of Moekma. I'm also active in keeping our tribe's language, which is Chochenyo, strong. And I'm the co-founder of Cafe Ohlone in Berkeley, which is the first Ohlone restaurant in modern times. And so all this work, it's about keeping strong and trying to let people know how all of this is living. And so I'd like to just be able, I exchanged my email to Abigail in a private message, and just to find ways throughout this process that we can be able to share our voices so that our story is implemented in a way that's fair and also socially just. And also if this process does go through, that we can be able to protect cultural sites along the creek and to be able to share our story in a respectful way.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Definitely great to have your contact information as we move forward.
Thanks.
All right. So thank you, Vincent. We have a question that is, if we do get the grant, how much and how long would this project take? And what's the plan for long-term maintenance?
Yes, good questions.
I could step into that. You know, I think that, like we've seen with the Richmond Greenway, and I've referenced these things, they do take time to fully realize them. The grant is going to be funding a lot of the important basic access infrastructure, getting a paved trail in there, getting the safety elements necessary along in terms of railing and with adjacent properties. So those are really some of the critical features. You know, we could see that being implemented, you know, really within you know, a 3 or 4 year window of time if we were successful with this grant. And in terms of long-term maintenance, this is really essential. It's essential for decision makers to have a handle on how this can be maintained over the long run before we get too excited about building it. And this is why this coalition has come together. While this is flood control district land, Hayward Area Recreation District is stepping forward to really help promote this, to provide those recreational benefits, and also to offer longer term maintenance associated with the project as well. We know that for it to be successful, it takes more than just one entity. So this involvement by the folks on this call, by our stakeholders, and you know what we're hoping for is a lot of long-term energy and support from the community to keep this active, to keep it attractive, to keep it fun, and those things really help with maintenance as well. So, yeah, good question, and there's a good plan in place.
All right. Vincent says, has the survey been sent to high school students, and talks about how there's an empowerment around the space and owning the space if they feel like they have a say, and it's not necessarily around vandalism or litter. Sorry, it's not, it doesn't lead to vandalism or litter in the area if it's, as long as it's not spread by authority figures message. And I recognize that we're running out of time. And Pixel 3 has, just to answer that question, yes, we are distributing it to local high school students, and we are working with, thanks to Diana and Carmen Lopez, the San Lorenzo High School District, San Leandro Unified School District, and also working with the Hayward Unified School District. Pixel 3 asks that they say that they live on the trail directly and have an easement. How will this affect that easement?
Yes, great question. Well, we're definitely working closely with the flood control district to understand all of their existing agreements. So I believe we're focused on some of the already accessible access roads and not planning to encroach on those areas. So that's a great question that we'll
might be a
look
good
into again and confirm again with Hank.
Yeah, it might be a good follow-up. Might be a good follow-up for you, just to give us a little bit more information in terms of an address, and that's something that we can certainly process, because that probably won't be the only instance.
Yeah.
We'll want to make sure we're in touch. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. We can confirm that more specifically as well.
If you want to give us your contact information, you can send it to me in a message directly. If you're still on the call. And then the final question that we have, I think, for the night, if we can stay for just a little bit longer, is some of our residents live right behind the creek from the Cottage Square community. Will the trail be on both sides of Llewellyn and Washington area?
That is a good question. I believe that area does have access roads on both sides. So part of the goal is to have the Creekway extend along both, but I think it's definitely something we're still testing out with the design. So right behind the creek, yeah, something we'll be a bit more clear about the next round as well. But yeah, if I believe the access road there is on both sides. So. Okay, I think we got one more question. I think maybe we'll make that the last one. Was that?
Yeah, so there are two in one.
Okay.
What elements of public art or opportunities for art will exist along the space? Joaquin mentioned giving opportunities for youth to participate in art. And the second question, there's a lot of homelessness in the proposed trail, and how will we deal with that?
Yeah, great. Yes, definitely. I think we're very interested in having building in opportunities for public art in those opportunity areas we described, maybe some of the plazas. It's definitely something we're still exploring and building upon, and we'll be working closely with folks that will help implement it. But there's an approach to also sort of embedding it into some of the details and the basic and components of the trail as well. So it's definitely something we're still exploring. And yeah, thank you for addressing that. Definitely aware of the issues with our unhoused community members along the Creekway or in the region across the Bay Area in general. We really feel that that's a big part of the importance of activation and making sure there are a lot of opportunities for the community to be connected and understand the needs of their local residents and be able to provide support for them. So I think that's really been a big part of our approach is focusing on how the programming and activation that goes along with the sorts of infrastructure can really support the community in that way. I think we are a little bit past time, and thank you everyone for sticking with us over the past hour and a half. Again, on the screen we have the online survey and opportunities to ask any follow-up questions you might have via email or through some of the other tools. And we'll be here again on Saturday at 10 a.m. So just make sure to check out the website, has our RSVP. We've been sending out emails. Feel free to respond to any of us with your direct contact information if you want to join some of the newsletters directly as well. So thank you everyone for participating, to our panelists, to all the community members that shared comments and questions, and we'll be back. So thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone's patience with this. This is our first round of virtual community meetings.
Cheers to
really appreciate
the digital world.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for facilitating. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was a fun meeting.
You. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. On with your evening. See you on the trail.
Yeah.